The phenomenon of the yugas is becoming an increasingly popular topic in the domain of spirituality and the awakening process, the planetary paradigm shift that we're experiencing. I've been studying the yugas for about 25 years, and when I first heard of them myself, there was very little information and very little rhetoric and dialogue and conversation around this topic. But as time's gone on, it's actually become an increasingly popular theme amongst people who are experiencing their own personal spiritual awakening and are expecting something of a collective awakening sometime during our lifetime. The time frames vary wildly, and the method of calculating the yugas is also something of a matter of contention. Recently, we've just seen the proclamation by some people that the Kali Yuga has ended with the beginning of the sun ingressing into Aries, which is basically the new astrological new year, which brings with it a number of further contentious issues around that, particularly with the time frame and the calculation of the yugas itself. So we know that when the sun moves into Aries, that is basically the new astrological year. It's the first sign in the zodiac. The verb for the Aries is I am. It's a new cycle. But when we start to overlap the cycles of the yugas with Western astrology, it becomes very problematic right from the beginning, because they're two different ways of calculating time. And this is further complicated if you start to look at precession of the equinoxes. And this precession moves backwards at approximately 1 degree every 72 years. So, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius from this way of calculating huge cycles of time. Furthermore, the cycles of ages in terms of Western astrology is approximately 2,000 years. That's not exactly correct, but the yugas are much bigger cycles of time, depending on your viewpoint, but we're talking approximately 26,000 years divided by 4. So there are 4 yugas, Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali. So basically they are a reflection of 4 different epochs, 4 different levels of consciousness. And the contention or the belief that we are not in a lowest yuga, in my view, is completely wrong. There's just no question about that. But the problem with the conversation around the yugas is most of the focus has been on the map rather than the terrain. So when we're trying to overlap Western astrology with the yugas, it doesn't really fit. And that doesn't make Western astrology wrong or the calculation of the yugas wrong, which is a Hindu phenomenon. The yugas are mentioned in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. So they are going way back in terms of their validity and history and so on. And the problem with the speculation of the cycles and the length of time and where we are and in what particular yuga is because we do not have a lot of historical information to draw on. Now, I won't go into what that is and why I question that in this video, but I'll hopefully make another video when I get a chance going into detail of these yugas, because we're entering a time now where, yes, this epoch is ending, and you can see that there is increased hysteria in the spiritual domain. There's all kinds of confusion in the New Age movement, which will only intensify. People are having all kinds of ridiculous claims that they can remove chakras, this kind of thing. And even some of the channeling and so on, it's very questionable, because for a topic, for example, like channeling, is that you're actually opening up your own being to be overtaken by another being, so to speak, and you're consenting to it. And the assumption is that the being that is coming in to make you talk and move and so on is always benevolent, which is very questionable, particularly on the purity or the elevation of consciousness on the practitioner, on the channeler that's doing that. So that doesn't mean that I am saying that channeling is fake or something like that, but we need to have a discernment on what particular channelers and who we pay attention to what they're saying, particularly in terms of some of the recent claims that some of them have made, which have been very dubious. That's without question. So this claim that we have entered the end of Kali Yuga, we experienced at Kali Yuga. Well, firstly, in my view, the yugas don't end and begin one day to another. These are huge cycles of time, and they don't just basically end and another one will be installed a day later. It doesn't work like that, because they're a reflection of consciousness, which is a reflection of the types of souls that are incarnating on the planet. So when you have an age like Kali, it's the lowest of the 4 yugas, the lowest of the cycles. It's the Iron Age. And it means that this Earth school is filled with souls who are extremely unevolved. And if you look at this from a Christian point of view, or some of the other doctrines, then you'll see that this whole reality is designed at this time to have a very inferior level of consciousness. And you can see that by the leadership in terms of business and governments and the wars, the famines, the disease, all these sorts of things. This is not a reflection of Satya Yuga. And to claim that this can all just be changed in one day, or it will just fade out or dissipate, the negativity, the suffering, the tyranny, all these sorts of things in one day, it's just not possible. So my interpretation of the yugas is basically, if we think of 2 tectonic plates moving over the top of each other. So the new yuga that's coming in, depending how you calculate it, which I won't speculate in this video, whether it's Dvapara or Satya, is the superior yuga, is the new yuga, and Kali is the older yuga. But there's pressure and fission with the tension as these yugas basically collide, because it is a completely different reality that is being born, which is essentially the new paradigm, the new Earth. So we can't reconcile that with what's occurring on this planet now. It's conflicted to think of this, that the two can coexist entirely side by side. One is in demise and one is basically getting the momentum. And we can see that now with the institutions that are all failing around the world and so on. And, you know, even just today, there's been big earthquakes in Bangkok and all this upheaval and turmoil. If you're born into a time like Satya Yuga, it's basically an invitation to live in deep harmony and peace and tranquility and certain perfection in this way. It's and very highly evolved beings are here. Now that doesn't mean to say it's bad to incarnate during Kali Yuga. It's actually, there's a lot of benefits because rapid transformation can occur. But the concept of the yugas is a vast one, requires a greater analysis and a greater consideration and a greater look at the actual terrain and not the map. So the claim that we are in this way moving out of the darkness, out of Kali Yuga, well, we are, but in my view, the current Yuga that we're in now, which is Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, the effects of it intensify the closer that we are to the end of it. It's a bit like it grows in momentum and it intensifies before it dissipates, and that can even be by a cataclysm. So this is something to think about in terms of how we frame things and not just jump on this hopium idea, this new age spiritual bypassing idea, and not also this Duma black pill idea that you know, we are going into this times of deep darkness. We've already been living through that. In fact, I would say we are coming out of that. The seeds of the new earth have been planted, but we're yet to really see that germinate and the fruition of what's happening and this consciousness start to blossom. But it is there if you have eyes to see, and that's something to think about in terms of how you view the world through your own lens, your own filter. That are you just looking at all the doom in the world and everything that is wrong and corrupt and destructive and dark? Or are you actually able to perceive the beauty and the perfection of things even in the chaos, the turmoil, and importantly this renaissance, this spiritual renaissance that is starting to occur? Because we are witnessing that, we are participating in it, we are observing it, and we are creating the new earth. Thanks for watching. We live in epic times.